So
Did you
Ken,
ever watch game? Yeah, go ahead.
no, I was
What's
going to
that?
ask you
Uh,
what's your favorite website to use for research?
for research?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yes, let's make it specific. For
Yeah,
research.
for research. Yeah, I'm like, should I tell you or not
Loaded
tell you?
question there. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, no, no.
Uh,
Talk about research here. Which one's
yeah,
your
in the
favorite?
wintertime, we do a lot of research, Tony and I. We do a lot of research and a lot of reaching out. And we've even kind of contacted landowners, especially if they're the kind of landowners that are remote and not here in Colorado.
Hmm.
We just kind of go fishing for permissions that way. But yeah, research websites for me has been, it's changed over the years. I'll tell you what.
Hmm.
Used to be oldmapsonline.org.
Hmm. Hmm.
And and then it's switched to USGS historical topo maps. I think I like that one, especially if there's some older maps signed because it's really easy to do the overlay and see how things line up. Man, when I did that World War II prisoner of war camp,
Yeah.
you should see, man, how well that lines up. And I know exactly where everything is there. It was just really great. Uh,
I just threw the link in the chat over there, and if you guys haven't seen that yet, you need to go
yeah,
over to that site because it is amazing. But I will tell you, it's hit or miss. If you don't have maps, I mean, there's nothing there. But if they have maps of the areas that you're looking at, it is incredible,
yeah, and
incredible.
we'll post all these links down below for people that listen later that don't go on the chat, don't read the comments. We'll post them in the description and all these sites we're going to talk about tonight. But the way the USGS historical topo maps work is you go to that link, you go to that site, and then there's a search bar that you just enter in a location. You can enter in a city, you could enter in a zip code, you can enter in an actual address. And then it goes to that site, that location, and gives you a map, a current map. And then you can even take your mouse and click on a spot. And down at the bottom there'll be this historic runner bar that'll tell you every map that they have and what year that map is from for that encompasses that spot where you've clicked on the map. And so you just start scrolling to the left to try to go back as early as you can find. And lo and behold, there's a 1906 map, let's say.
Hmm.
And you're like, cool, show me that map. You click on that map, and then it brings it up. And then there's a slider bar for changing the opaqueness and the overlay opaqueness of the map. So you can kind of change that in and out. And you can add pins to it and just kind of really see some great overlays. And, oldmapsonline.org used to do that too.
Hmm.
And that's a pretty good one as well. But it wasn't as accurate as the historical topo maps, the USGS. It wasn't
Yeah.
as accurate. The overlays didn't quite line up on a lot of different. Sometimes they did, but a lot of times they wouldn't. So
I know Ohio Relic Hunter said historicaerials.com is a site that he recommends as well. And I know
yeah,
you've
that's
used
the
that.
one. That's the overlay one,
That's
right?
the overlay one. Yeah, the old
Right.
maps is a different one, but yeah,
Yeah. Right.
um,
That's right.
and they have a really good watermark as well on
They
historicaerials.com.
do,
I'll
but
just
that's the one I was talking about. That's the
yeah,
one
yeah, yeah.
that's the one I was talking about where sometimes the overlays don't really line
Hmm.
up as much, at least in Colorado. For all the ones I checked here
Yeah.
in Colorado, a lot of the maps they did back then were really kind of hard to line up. But historical topo maps, US from the USGS, have really seemed to work that way. How about you? What's one of your favorite
I
sites?
that USGS is my go-to. I have that saved as my favorites on every computer that I have, and I use that religiously. But I will tell you, if you can get good maps, any of the Sanborn fire insurance maps,
Oh, great.
um, if you have some of those for the area that you're looking for, those can be invaluable.
Yeah. What
Uh,
is that? People that listening might not know what a Sanborn fire insurance map is.
I think you're probably better to give a description of it than I am.
It's basically insurance companies back then would send around adjusters and inspectors and insurance people to go map out areas of a city. As the city was growing, they would add to it, and then what they would actually do is they would actually draw building locations. Sometimes when you go on Google Maps and you're searching a Google, a satellite image, and you zoom down in it to where you can see the buildings on each side of the street. And you can even see that if you go out of the satellite image and kind of look, you can actually see the buildings on some of the like Google Map search and stuff. But Sanborn fire insurance maps were all kind of done by hand, and that what they put down is they actually would put down what kind of structure it was made out of, whether it was a concrete or brick structure, whether it was a wood structure, how many stories it was, and kind of the general use for it. And that's where the really nifty use of those maps comes in handy. Is you can see where the saloons were, you can see where the stables were, you could see where the local churches were, where and then it says in there what they were made out of. But you can really determine like where the gathering points were from some of these fire insurance maps. And like I said, they would release them not every year, but they would release them maybe every 2 to 3 years, where these cities, man, I'm telling you what, in 1870s, 1880s, cities were exploding. They were just growing so much, especially here in Colorado. So you look at the 1870s Sanborn map, and it's just like, 4 streets and, 10 buildings. And then you go to the 1881, 10 years later, and it's, tons and tons of buildings. It's just exploded. And what they do is they have a key map that they show that's kind of like shows the different areas and has a number on the key. And then they have individual maps for each of the key areas where it's blown up. So again, not really any function to zoom in on those things. They are what they are. You can download them. You can blow them up yourself if you really need to get in there close. But it was a Sanborn map that made me learn about the town I used to live here in Colorado called Longmont. It was the start of J.C. Penney's. Like this little store on Main Street was the beginning of J.C. Penney's.
Well, and what's really cool
I was able to know exactly where that's at now.
Yeah.
I know exactly what building that is. It's like a bar now.
Right. Yeah. You look at it and then you can drive past it and go, gosh, that was such and such, 100 years ago. And now it's nothing to do with it. It's a real estate building right now, or so,
Right.
That's so cool.
Right. There was a bank there. There was a saloon next to it.
Right.
There was a meat market next to that. You're like, they were spending money right there.
Right there.
You know what I mean? So they started tearing up that road.
And when
that sidewalk or that
they're doing the sidewalk
right
tear outs. That's where you want to be
That's where you're headed. Yeah,
absolutely.
Right there's where you're headed.
I really like that they tell you what the business was in that location. And like, what did it say over here in the chat? I lost
the Privy Pits.
Yeah, the Privy Pit. Yeah, Ohio Relic Hunter says that they show Privy Pits as well. So it's a very detailed map about really the activity of what was going on in that small town at that time. And like Ken said, if you're looking at where they're spending money, that's where you're going to want to find those coins when they're doing those sidewalk tear outs. And you can see the Privy Pits and go to that area. But I really like it that it's detailed, tells you, the name of the business, what type of business, even the owners of that particular location, the corrals that were there, all of those kind of different things.
Parade grounds.
Oh my gosh.
Parks that they developed then.
Just being able to research the history of whatever town that you're doing or looking at, to me, I just love knowing the historical side of that town. Yeah. And those Sanborn maps are fantastic for that. I think they are.
Yeah, because think about it. You go, you drive around. If you're like us, our heads are always on a swivel, right? So you're always looking and stuff. And then let's say you're in a new town that you're just not that familiar with, and you're driving around, and you see this empty lot. Maybe you're like, I wonder why that's an empty lot. I wonder what they're doing there. There's just a few trees, but there's no building there really. So then you go and you find a Sanborn map for it, and you're like, oh, that used to be a park.
Boom.
You're like, no, I've got to find the owner of that property. I've got to get in there. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great. It was just, they didn't know back then that they were providing such a valuable service to us future detectives. I'll tell you that.
That's right.
But those are great, absolutely great maps and stuff. So when you go on something like USGS historical topo maps, tell us about how you do your research, Tony. Like, I know for a while there you were like trying to pull up the old maps and looking for the school sites and stuff like that.
Yeah, the school sites are going to be they're going to be like, they look like houses with a flag on top. So you have a house with a pole coming up off the peak of the house with a flag that comes off it. Those are going to be your school sites.
Little icon, right?
Yeah,
Icon on
little
the map.
icon of where they were located on the map, and then you're going to have your churches, which will be the same thing. It's a house. Instead of a flag, you'll have a cross that comes off the top of it. Those to me are spots where they congregated a lot. They had dances, they had meetings, that's where everybody they all went to and had good times back then. Would be your churches and your schools. They use the schools for a whole bunch of different things.
Right.
So those are the places that I really look for a lot. And I tell you, when I'm doing it in Colorado, I'm looking for intersections, four-way intersections, and on that corner would be, the symbol of the church. So from there, I'll use that slider and see because names of streets have changed obviously over time as well. And so it may not be what it is today, what it was named previously. So I'll try and, I'll use that slider, try and find out what the names of the streets are, and then I'll head over to just a regular map site, Google Maps or whatever, and go and see, well, actually not, I use Google Maps specifically because they have the overhead, the satellite image of it, and find that intersection where there used to be a school, do the satellite image overhead and see what's there now. Generally, if you're out in the middle of nowhere, like eastern Colorado, northeastern Colorado, those kind of different things, you're going to find that it's usually just open fields that are still there right now, but there's no structures there, there's no buildings there, there's no stores or anything like that right now. So those are the areas that I look for when I'm doing that research if I'm trying to get out to the middle of nowhere.
Right. Yeah, and sometimes they'll show mills, like mill sites, on there next to mines and stuff. Like they'll have, coal mines were big here for a while down in the Meade area and stuff, and they would kind of like they would put on there, mill sites. Sometimes you would be able to see, waterways and kind of the way the river ran back then. Sometimes you can find old maps that show crossings of those rivers, and so I'm the same way too. It's like it depends. I can do I usually do both ways, right? Either you're coming where I'm going to go fishing and pull up an old map and then go look for those icons and key in on that, and then use the slider to see what's there now, right, on the overlay. And then if that's not clear enough, go to a satellite image on Google and see what's there now, right? A lot of times, though, if I see a house, these little square dots that are houses or buildings, when I see that house and I go and I do the overlay and I use a slider, the house is still there.
Yeah.
So one, it gives me a sense of how old the house is, how long it's been there. Well, I know at least it's been there. If the earliest map I have is in 1906 and it's showing that house, chances are it's been there a lot longer than 1906. So, was it built in 1900? Well, then what I can usually do is I can go look at something like Zillow real estate app on my phone or on the computer and pull up that house and click on it. It has a map feature on Zillow, and I can go there and kind of click on that house and it'll tell me the year it was built. So then it gives me a lot of information I go with. And as far as, how long that house has been built. But a lot of times it shows the house there. And a lot of times what I'm looking for is on the old map, it's showing a home. And on the new map, it's not. It's a field now or it's an empty lot. Those are the kind of sites I really want to go see.
Yeah.
School sites, church sites, like Tony said. But if it is like pre-1900 house, and I'm like, cool, that's pretty old for Colorado. Anything 1870s plus is pretty old here. Cool. Then I want to go try to find out who the owner of that is and how do we go about doing that. And there's a few steps we have to take, kind of find out who the owner is and try to then decide how we're going to contact him.
Yeah. I know that I use a couple different routes to try and find the owner. One is you can go to the county website, to the assessor's office and put in the address. If you've got that address of that location, say, you went to Zillow, you got the address and when it was built and everything, you can just type that in and generally it's going to tell you who the owner is. It's public information and you can use those county websites to find that information. if there's no home there, you don't necessarily know what the address is. It's, a field. You don't know how many acres are owned by the owner of that area. I myself, I use OnX, the OnX app. You have to pay for it per year, and you can actually download or pay for different states, I believe. It's a hunting map for, like, large game, those kind of different things. So we do a lot of that out here in Colorado. So I have access to that app. And so what you can do then is they have a really good satellite feature on X, and you can click on it. It's going to tell you the size of the acreage. It's going to tell you the name of the owner as well as the address of where that owner lives at. And generally, if we find these old this old land or whatever, that's just land now, there's nothing there, there's no structure, those people that own it don't even live in the area. They obviously don't live on that 160 acres or whatever, and so it gives you a spot then that you can go and door knock after that. And I think I've gotten a lot of permissions just door knocking and saying, hey, you guys, I'm a metal detectorist. I'm interested in the area that's over at such and, First and Main Street over there. There's, a large plot of land, and we know that you guys own that. I'm looking for a house that used to be over there in the 1870s, and we're just interested, if you'd let us go over there and metal detect. And number one, after they go, how did you find me?
Yeah, right.
Then they generally don't have an issue with us going over there because there's no structures there. You're not digging into the tulips or anything like that. So that's how I generally find those kind of areas. If there's no structures there, if it's just a big field, and I was gonna say, the part that I really love about the research side of it is when I do find an old house, say it's an old house,
Right.
I find the location on a satellite map over the top. And I know you and we send pictures back and forth when this happens. We'll be looking at the satellite and you start zooming in where you're trying to find where this structure used to be. And all of a sudden, they say, no, right angles don't exist in nature. And all of a sudden you find 4 right angles. You found a foundation. You found where that structure sat, and I tell you the excitement that comes over me is just I go
Right.
crazy over that because I'm like, there's no
Yeah.
guessing where it was in this field. It is right there in
Right.
that field, and it's you can see it on that overhead. And once you find that, forget it. I'm on to who owns it, when am I going out there, and I'm
Right.
charging the machines right now because if you can find that kind of stuff, gosh,
Right.
it's God, that feeling that
Can you
that
imagine?
happens.
You're
Oh,
getting it right now. I can
I
feel it.
am. I just go crazy for that. It's
Getting the
insane.
goosebumps, man.
It is.
I can't imagine what it's like for people that live in the part of the country that
Uh,
have cellar holes,
yeah.
and they're able to go into the forest and stuff, and they happen upon a cellar hole. Like I can't even imagine that. Like that would just give me the goosebumps so much, and would just be so exciting to me. Like when we went up in the mountain, and I think we saw that one cellar hole, but
Uh
it was on
huh.
private property. It was still so exciting, even though we couldn't get in there. I was like, "Oh man, that's an actual cellar hole right
We
there!"
stood
And
there looking at that, going, that looks like it is back
like it was a
east.
unicorn. Like it was a
Yeah,
unicorn.
we don't see that in Colorado, right?
We don't. When we do, it's exciting. I'll tell you.
Ah,
Yeah. So either on these maps, either I'm looking for symbols and then comparing it to what's there now, or I've driven by and twisted my neck and found an empty site, an empty plot of land that I want to know what used to be there. And then I'll go and do the overlay just to see if there was any home sites there, any stuff, and those are the two ways. And then also, instead of entering the address, you can also in some of these assessor's office have these GIS maps that you can
mhm.
go and do a property search, and it just gives you a map. A lot of them have just maps that you can then zoom in on the property in question, and you start seeing the outline of the property lines, of all the different property lines. A lot like OnX does,
Mhm.
and Gaia GPS. I use Gaia GPS for that too, which is another program, another app. which is great because you can put pins on it and you can kind of do a bunch of stuff after you've done your overlays and stuff. So you have then targets to go out there and hit from a GPS standpoint. Same as on X, I believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, then you just click on the plot of land and two things. One, you see exactly at that point how much land they actually own that's connected to the one little house plot that you're looking for. Sometimes it's multiple plots and they own it. And also you can right click on it and you can see or click a button and see the information and see who the owner is. And then, like Tony said, then you have the option to go try to locate them. It's great when they're local. It's not so easy when they're not local. So a lot of times, or they're an LLC that owns it.
Yeah, that happens
So
a lot.
you see a bunch of abandoned farms and you're like, oh my gosh, they're getting ready to destroy that and build a bunch of homes. How can I get permission for that? So you go look it up and all of a sudden it's owned by some house development LLC or a trust, a person that owned it before, a living trust. Trying to get a hold of those people and trying to get permission is even harder, but sometimes I see that as a challenge that I like, because it's always a learning experience. Like I'll try a different tactic with each time I try to approach them to see exactly how I go about doing that.
Yeah, I've struck out quite a few times, more often than not with the LLCs. Generally
Yeah.
because it's one of two things out here in Colorado at least. One is it's going to be livestock owner. There's a guy that lives out in Elbert County and he owns like 50% of Elbert County. Approach him and ask him, hey, listen, there's this area, but he will not let you on because it's full of livestock. That's what his business is, and he doesn't want people out there. Or the second one will be that land development company where they've purchased it, and in the future they're going to be developing, neighborhoods and things like that. And I know that you and I both hate to see when you come across an old map, you see a structure, you see an old church, and then you do that overlay, and it's like a brand new 2020
Yeah.
2021 do development right over the top of it.
Right. Or concrete strip mall.
Yeah.
That's
Just
happened more than
heartbreaking.
once. You're just
Heartbreaking.
Like, a few years too late. Hey, there's been some great suggestions coming in the chat. We should probably scroll back and look at some
Yep.
of this stuff. I
Yeah.
know that Ohio Relic Hunter and Tim have been throwing up some great stuff too. And Bill says most maps on the atlas are from master atlases. You find the legend page from that atlas a lot of the times, and the older ones from different cartographers. They use different icons, so it's not always the same thing, and that's true. I mean,
Sure.
Tim was saying that he had a symbol on the map that's not on the legend. He said the blacksmith shop is marked as a circle with an X in it, but there's another symbol that on the map that is just a circle without anything in the center. And does anybody have any ideas for that, or
That's a
have we
good
ever
question.
seen that symbol? That's a great question.
Yeah.
So, if you guys have answers out there, go ahead and throw it in the chat here, or even comment later if you happen to be listening later. We go back and check comments all the time. Bill also set up the road. There's a site up the road from him had some strange-looking markings on the map, and he thought it meant swampland. But come to find out, these icons meant old orchards from the 1700s. Now,
Wow.
I've seen orchard markings on old maps before. Definitely, when I was looking up some of my genealogy maps and stuff from some of my family in the past, from the 1700s especially, it definitely shows where orchards were or groves of trees. I love those old maps that show that stuff because they're all hand drawn and they definitely give you a different perspective, especially when you overlay them and you see that it hasn't really changed much since the 1700s.
Right.
Like the grove of trees is still there. The outline's pretty much the same. I know one of my king line is on some farmland, and there's a king cemetery there. And it's in the middle of a grove of trees, an orchard. And I've heard other relatives of mine that are out doing genealogy that have visited it before, and it's all dilapidated. It's not kept up. It's all overgrown. It's just in this grove of trees. They kind of cleaned off some of the headstones that have fallen over and broken, and some of them aren't even carved and stuff. But when I overlay that, like I can totally see where it's at and see they actually have a marker saying, graveyard.
Wow.
And it's right in the middle of the same, like you can see the outline of the grove to the grove of trees to the field, that farm field, and it's all the same from
That's so cool.
mid 1800s. It's
That's
really
so
cool.
We've got a friend on YouTube, Pull Tab Commando. He purchased a home over there in Ohio, and through his research, he was actually able to find out that it was an old peach orchard was where this house and stretching out across further houses that are now there. But he has the original house to that orchard, and I know that because I forward the pictures onto you. The things that he's found in that location have been absolutely insane. Actually, found a trash pit right outside his back door. And him and his wife have been back there digging, and the bottles that were coming out of there were just insane. But he didn't even know. Didn't even know it until he looked up his house after he bought it and was like, "Wait a minute,
Yeah.
what's
Didn't you find a plate on that property?
I think he did. Yeah,
He did.
I can't remember
that.
what kind it
Backyard
was.
found a plate.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's one of those
insane.
square ones, I think, square eagle ones.
Mm-hmm.
Like a belt plate.
Amazing,
It's
amazing.
incredible. Yeah, and somebody mentioned LiDAR, and we should probably chat about that. Now, I know my friends over in the UK, they use that LiDAR a lot. It's really well developed over there. A lot of areas have a lot of really great LiDAR maps. And basically what that shows is it shows kind of almost like an X-ray contour image of the ground. I know that they're using LiDAR like in the Amazon jungle
the
and stuff, and
rainforest, yeah.
rainforest, and they're finding all
Yeah.
kinds of things they never knew were there before. And it's great for that
Mm-hmm.
if you're in an area where they've had a lot of development for it,
Yeah.
and in an area where, like I know here in Colorado, it's not the best. You can find them. I know the guy when we did, and Tony, I think you're frozen up. If you're still on with me, let me know. Either that or my internet's going out, one of the two. But yeah, they don't have it everywhere. You know what I mean? So check that out. If you guys do use it, let us know in the chat. What luck you've had with that. You know what I mean? Hey there, Tony. You back with me?
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I can hear you. Perfect. You're back. That was weird. Skype just dropped you.
Strange.
Yeah. Hey, B-Man, welcome. Yeah, good to see you, man. First time in here. He's been able to catch the show. Welcome to the
Nice.
show. Yeah, LiDAR. They are. The software to run it is really huge. The files are really huge. It takes a lot of processing power and memory on your computer to run it. And it's an education. So hey, it's winter time. Tell you what, go
Learn something
about
new.
LiDAR. Yeah, go learn about LiDAR. Go learn about what kind of files to look for. A lot of government agencies put them out. A lot of local, university agencies put them out and stuff. And it's definitely interesting and a lot of fun, but can make your head spin too, right? I know a lot of people get frustrated with it and give up on it. But how about you, Bill? Let us know. Do you use it? Do you use it where you're at? Have you ever used it, Tony?
No, I haven't. Lots of people swear by it. Once you use it and understand it, figure it out, pick it up, it can be pretty incredible stuff. Like you were talking, using it down in, Brazil, Central America, even Mexico, trying to find all those old settlements and civilizations that, through that forest it's just so thick. They do it, from the top using that it penetrates down through the trees. And then again, like I said, with the satellites, you get to see all those right angles, and all of a sudden you've got a civilization in an area that you never knew existed.